Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Barbara Carrington-Lawlor, a retired school administrator who facilitates a support group for separated and divorced individuals. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm delighted. We'll all learn a lot hearing you describe your work, which you describe to me as a ministry. You don't charge for this support group.
No, I do not.
How did you start it? What training did you receive? Let's talk about the beginning days.
I actually saw an ad in a church bulletin that they were looking for people who were willing to start a group. They called it a ministry, recognizing the need for support for separated and divorced individuals. So I answered the ad, and they accepted me. I do have a background. I have a social and psych background, and I had been in education for all those years. And I went down for a training. It mostly was just to go over the format of the program and to pick up materials. And we did some role playing. Not everybody who volunteered for this and wanted to do this had an education background.
Mm-hmm.
I received a certification, so to speak, and then I began the group. I was able to use the church basement at Our Lady of Loretto Church in Waterbury. That's where I started my ministry 8 years ago.
Tell us about it now, like what's happened over the 8 years, what's a typical session involved, how people sign up.
It's a 10-week program. People sign up through ads that I have in the paper. All are welcome. Everything is confidential.
Mm-hmm.
You must be separated. That is a requirement that you are separated or divorced. It is run like a seminar in the sense that each week we use a book called Divorce and Beyond, and they also get a journal in which to put down their thoughts. They're given a list of questions each week. They're introspective type questions to help them sort of figure out what has happened to them. It's co-ed, and there's no age limit. I have people who have been married 18 years. I've had people come who've been married 30 years. We meet on Tuesday nights at 6:30. They're 90-minute sessions. And that consists of a presentation that I make based on the topic for the week: anger, blame, guilt, self-esteem. And then there's activities associated with that, and there are readings, which I research myself, and I add to the textbook current things that would be pertinent to what we're talking about. And there's a discussion, which I guide. I don't necessarily lead the discussion. And after the session, if anyone wishes to stay and talk, maybe to meet one-on-one or continue the discussion, they're welcome to do so. I'm also available during the week to call me. It's all done over the phone or text, and we only use first names to protect confidentiality. I have a fall and a spring session, and sometimes I have a full 10, which is what I max out at. Otherwise, it loses its effectiveness. And I've had smaller groups as well. There isn't a time better, like the fall is not necessarily better than the spring, because we're talking about emotions and the state of mind of people, and there's really no calendar with that.
Right.
I think that the people who come, you have the option to talk if you want to. I don't force anybody to do that. And they do tend, after a level of trust has been built up, and they realize, oh, well, I'm not the only one that feels like this. Even though the circumstances that brought your marriage to failure, the feelings, they may be unique, but the feelings aren't. The flooding emotions, the roller coaster and effects that you go through, the grieving, they're the same. And these are the things that we do talk about. And write, and they have the option to write in their journals if they wish. That's not forced. I give them the journal, you take it home, and you write. You want to take those questions each week. If you just want to ask yourself those questions and just think about them and reflect, that's fine. If you want to write them down, then you have the the journal to do so. I never see it once I give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's for them to keep and for them to help start moving towards regaining some sort of balance in their life. There's 3 stages to separation divorce. There's the death of the relationship, there's the mourning period, and then there's regaining balance. In the first stage, which is where I see most people, it's confusion. What you thought your life was going to be like, it's all gone now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the self-doubt, there's the economic issues sometimes that are involved. And you just wonder, where am I going to go and what am I going to do? It's like when someone dies. You had your life, you had a life with this person, a relationship with this person. Now they're gone. Well, when you get divorced, the same thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
All the dreams and hopes, goals, whatever you had are now gone. And now you have to make a new life for yourself. And very few of these things are sudden. Most divorces, the death of the relationship or the failure of the marriages was a lingering thing. About 90%. About 10% are surprises to the person that this occurs to. And then there's the mourning session where you're trying to figure out many, many things. Where you are. That's when you have the anger and the guilt. Whose responsibility? And usually those are contentious. Not all the time, but they are. And then when you get through that, then it's looking forward to, where am I going to go on this journey of life? How am I going to regain some kind of balance in my life? And who am I now? Because you spend a lot of time, in some cases people have been married over 30 years, being someone's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden you're not. Or someone's husband, and now all of a sudden you're not. So there's the loss of identity and rediscovering yourself, looking within yourself as to who you are. And sometimes you find that talents that you had, you put aside, other things that you might have wanted to do, you just let go of them and concentrated on marriage, which of course obviously you want it to be a success. But people get lost in relationships, and part of it is to find yourself again. Mm-hmm. You'll get as much into this as you decide to put into it if you're a participant.
And do you find most people stay with the 10 weeks?
Yes, they do. If they start, they do finish. I've had people that, life goes on, and, a work schedule has changed, for example, or a babysitter didn't show up. If you miss a session, the handouts that I gave that week, I will call you in between, bring you up to date, read the next chapter. You can catch right back up. Okay, I have had people that after a few weeks they decided that it wasn't what they were looking for. They wanted to go back into their marriage and try again. That's fine. Mm-hmm. When they pick up the phone to call, they're looking for help and they're looking for support, and that's what the program offers you.
And you had mentioned it's sometimes helpful. Someone may come back who had been part of a group earlier, and that person was a fellow, I believe, actually inspires others that they get to see a living, breathing example of life on the other side of this journey.
No, absolutely. I have had people that have come. You always can come back, or you can stop in for a tune-up, as one of my participants calls it. But that I appreciate, and the group benefits by it, because if it's someone who has already been through the program and they are now on their way to regaining the balance in their life, they're proof. It's not just hearing it from me. Yes, I've survived divorce, and I refuse to be a victim of it, which is my theme: be a survivor, not a victim. But I think when you hear another voice and you see someone in front of you that's saying, I was there and now I'm here. And it gives them hope that they can aspire to. But again, it's an individual thing. You can't tell someone how long to grieve. You can't tell someone it's going to happen in 3 months, you're going to feel all better. It's a process. And not everybody moves along the process at the same pace.
Right.
But yes, I do appreciate the people who come back. And some people come back and sit through it because they're in a different spot.
Okay.
Let's say they came to the fall session, 4 months have gone by.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things could have happened in that time. And now they're in a different spot. And even though they've been through it before, they hear it differently.
Right.
It relates to them differently.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever resonated in the past now has a different meaning for them, a more profound meaning. Depends on the individual.
And you yourself went through divorce, and I'm sure that really informed your experience in terms of how much people can benefit from this, and you can relate to them, etc. Right?
Yes, I did. I've been there. Been there, done that, as the phrase goes. Those things that they feel, I have gone through those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I really do understand. People do say, I know how you feel. And sometimes if you haven't had that experience, oh, how do you know how I feel? You haven't been there. I have been there. I chose to survive. It wasn't easy. I was married for 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long process. Fortunately, I had a family that was supportive of me, and I was determined that I was going to move on, that I had to move on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could stay a victim, and that wasn't going to get me very far. I had a young son at the time. I had a career. I was fortunate I did. But as they say, life goes on, and I decided, well, I need to go on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Very painful. I don't mean to minimize this at all.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and turning on the TV because you can't sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need to get up to work 3 hours later. I mean, there were many nights like that. And
Sure.
I do share parts of my story were pertinent with the people of the group. Not that I like talking about myself, but it's more validation as to what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more willing to share. It's a good reminder to me where I've been and where I'm going to. But when I walk away, I feel like I did something for somebody else. And that's what I get out of doing that.
Wonderful. And you talk about the family support that you had, and 5 months after your divorce, you got a cancer diagnosis.
Yes, I did.
And you drew on those resources, right? Your family support.
Yes, I did. 5 months after the divorce was final, I had wonderful doctors, and I was very fortunate that it was detected early. I had a cousin who passed away at 36 years old, breast cancer. So my doctor had always tested me every year. I went for my mammogram because I had a history of it in the family. And I went for my usual appointment, and they called and said, we found a mass. Now, this was maybe 14 years after my cousin had passed away, and I had been going every year. And before I knew it, it was a whirlwind. I went to have a biopsy, and I was told it was 80% chance that this was benign.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother came with me, so I wasn't alone. And when I woke up, it wasn't benign.
Mm-hmm.
It was cancer. And he was there to, support me at that point. And then I had my nodes. 3 weeks later, I had another operation to see that it had spread. It had not.
Mm-hmm.
And I underwent the chemo and things that followed. I was very, very fortunate. I say that all the time. Early detection, not just October, when it's breast cancer month. And gentlemen can get cancer as well, breast cancer. My brother wasn't so lucky. He was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia 3 years ago. He fought it for 10 months. I was his stem cell donor in an effort to try and save him, but it wasn't meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a courageous battle he fought down at Smilo. Wonderful doctors there, but it was just too far advanced. It's a very aggressive cancer. It's AML are the call letters for it, because there's different types of leukemia. So where he was there for me, then I was there for them. Two different results, unfortunately.
Well, let's shift a little from that to, and thank you for sharing your story around all that, your years as a high school principal. And very interesting to me, being a host of this show, is that you got the inspiration to use video format to replace the standard newsletter.
Yes, they
that
do.
maybe never made it home, and right, and you got some publicity and maybe notoriety out of that. People would recognize you in the store as, oh yeah, okay, because people were more inclined to watch it than to read the newsletter. So tell us a little bit about that experience. There's a story of a prom dress and John F. Kennedy Jr.
Well, it's true. The high school student, not necessarily that attentive to bringing home flyers like they would with the younger kids. And I had a video studio at Crosby, and how are the kids going to learn in the video production class if they have nothing to film? How are they going to learn how to edit? How are they going to learn how to use the camera? So I worked with the teacher, and it was a teaching period for me every week. And I developed the idea of the Crosby Corner, which was my video newsletter to the parents, the Crosby parents and the viewers of Channel 16, my infomercial. And I would go over what was going on in the school, so everybody knew midterm exams are coming up. These are the dates. This is when school vacation is. You know, the housekeeping type details. And then I would have guests. I would have, let's say, the ROTC club was there and talking about the new competition that's coming up. Or I would have the history department in that was going on a field trip. I like to feature the kids and the teacher who is advising them, and also to educate who was watching. And one show I did community things as well, was the Waterbury Youth Services came up with this idea to offer prom dresses to young ladies, because it is a very big thing, okay? And I guess it's a path. They were inviting young ladies, the public schools, not just Crosby, could go down to their offices, and they had dresses, some brand new that had been donated or lightly used. They had jewelry. They had the pocketbook. They had
the accessories.
They had everything. They had people to do your hair. And a girl who otherwise couldn't afford to go could be outfitted. Well, it really resonated with me because it brought back a story from my past. When I was assistant principal over at Kennedy a number of years before this show, I had a parent come in, a nice gentleman. He came in. His wife had passed away a few months earlier. And he came in and he said, my daughter is grieving, as am I. This prom is coming up, and I have no idea how to get her a dress, what to do. And I said, well, what does she need? He said, well, she needs a dress of some sort. And I said, well, have you looked, or have you done anything? And he said, well, I did look at some material with her. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. I called the sewing teacher, and I explained the situation. It really was touching because she said, sure, have her come down. And her girls, were 10 girls in the class, they took the material. She brought in a pattern because nothing had really been done. His dad didn't know. And they outfitted her. They made her a wrap to go with the dress. It was cranberry. I can see it now that I'm talking about it. And the caring they had and that sense of community you're trying to instill in students, it all like blossomed there. She looked stunning that night. That teacher and those students gave her a memory that, she would have forever.
Wonderful.
So when Waterbury Youth Services was basically doing a similar thing, it brought back that particular memory.
Sure.
And back to my Kennedy days, I also was fortunate while I was there to be on the Kennedy 20 committee, and John Kennedy Jr. was invited to come and speak. It was amazing because you remember, I did anyway, the little boy saluting David's father's funeral, and now here is this law student.
Very handsome.
Very handsome, very gracious. And afterward, he came to the teacher's lounge, and he signed autographs. He stood there for pictures. I mean, he couldn't have been nicer. You would not think he was anyone of that kind of stature. And it was pretty exciting. I also met Rick Mustachio, Crosby graduate, NASA astronaut.
Wonderful.
Who went off to space, and we watched him in the auditorium. He blasted off in 2001. Then he came back that spring, did an assembly,
Nice.
and we all got to meet him.
How inspiring.
Yeah, definitely inspiring. So I'm very fortunate in my career to have met some very interesting people. There's so many stories. It would take
Well,
hours.
let's think about today and what you like most about this stage of your life.
I think that I like the freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I like the idea that I don't know where the journey is going to take me and what's around the corner, and I find that to be exciting. I don't feel old, or let's say mature. I want to say old.
Okay.
That things are not over because I retired from a career. I'm doing the support group. I think there's always something to aspire to, and I think that I will probably be looking for other activities to be involved in. They haven't come to me yet, but the divorce group came to me, and I didn't go to it. So one never knows.
So you're receptive,
Oh, yeah.
kind of a let's see.
Oh, yes.
Right.
I think so.
Wonderful.
Being an educator, your day is pretty rigid in terms of bells and schedules and things. Don't misunderstand. I had a wonderful career, but I don't miss it now. And I like where life has led me. And I'm very, very appreciative that I'm here.
In your early school career, you taught social studies.
Yeah.
Could you share how that experience has helped you being a facilitator in this role with the support group?
I was used to be in front of an audience. The teachers at a high school at 5 subjects, they do 25 performances a week, more than a Broadway actor does. I think with my social and psych background, and because I had taught units on marriage and the family as part of the curriculum there, and as a teacher, I learned to be a good listener. And I did give advice because students would come to you. I had juniors and seniors. And at that point in time, they're trying to figure out who they are. And I was open, probably because I was closer to their age.
Okay.
I really don't know. But I was receptive to what they had to say, and I tried to guide them as much as I could. When I started teaching, I was 21 years old. Birth is later in the year. And I had 18-year-old and 19-year-old students. I wasn't that much older than they were at the time. As the years went on, I think you become more comfortable. You get better at teaching. I also taught history classes as well, but the social and psych classes were my favorite. They were senior electives.
And they came right in later on to help provide that foundation for you as
they did.
the
They-
facilitator of the support group.
Absolutely, because I would role play in class. Some of the techniques that I used with my group, I used when I was teaching those classes because they were electives and you had a little more freedom than when, say, you're teaching U.S. history and you have to get
Curriculum.
the curriculum. I was able to employ those because I've done this and it's been successful. Let's see if it's successful with an older group. But as I said, I think being comfortable talking to people and having had the experience of being in front of people, it's not easy. I mean, if there's 5 people or there's 20 people or 30 people. And as a principal, I used to address much larger groups of people, and I gave professional workshops. So all of that helps in what I do now. I can draw upon that.
Thank you. And what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I wrote this out, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Dear Barbara, you possess the tools to set goals and achieve them. You have been instilled with an inner strength that you will need to draw upon as you face some big challenges in your life. Don't worry if you are good enough, because you will be.
I love it. That's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you.
And you also have a favorite passage when I asked what a good quote would be. So
Yes,
you wanna
this is
tell us about that?
Dr. Seuss. This goes back to my education days. And I actually use this with my support group. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter, they don't mind.
So the wisdom from a children's book.
Absolutely.
And you also shared that at your retirement party, I understand, right?
I ended my retirement speech at my party with that statement, yes.
Well, this has been wonderful, Barbara. Thank you so much for sharing about the support group. And I just want to reinforce it's free. It's not necessarily associated with the church,
No.
right? And you supply the materials out of your own
Yes, I do.
pocket, so to speak. And I think that's a beautiful example of anyone who wants to really embrace new opportunities as they move through different stages of their life and are able to do that. So using their own experience.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of Midlife Matters. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host. Thank you for watching.